Hello and welcome to AA Beyond Belief, the podcast. I'm your host, John S. Today I'll be speaking with Vic L. from New York, New York. We'll be talking about the present and future state of secular AA, and I think you'll find this a very interesting discussion. Hello, Vic. Thank you very much for agreeing to write the article for AA Beyond Belief and also for joining me in this podcast. I found your article really interesting, and I've learned a lot about you, and I'm very interested in learning more and hearing about your views. There's so much I want to talk to you about, Vic. I don't really know where to start, but maybe we might just want to go through a little bit about what you wrote. Would you like to start maybe from the beginning about your experience with AA and how you found agnostic AA? I found that kind of interesting. It surprised me, actually.
Yeah. Well, again, I thank you for this opportunity, and I just want to reiterate that I speak only for myself and not for AA, like no one does.
Sure.
But and not as a member of the WAF board of directors. I came into AA in 1979 when I was 35 years old, and I was immediately turned off by what I thought the religiosity and the God business, but I was really desperate, and through a whole bunch of circumstances, I said, look, I just have to get sober. I don't care what people tell me to do that I don't believe in necessarily, or whatever I feel uncomfortable doing, I'll do it. I mean, I was a lapsed Catholic, or as someone said, collapsed Catholic, and so I had a resentment, but people said, you got to get in touch with God. So I said, okay. I did everything. I was very teachable. I went to 90 meetings in 90 days, got a sponsor, did the steps, read the daily meditations, prayed on my knees.
Wow.
Went to step meetings, and my life changed. I mean, it was really a big line of demarcation in my life. But underneath was this always sort of gnawing aspect that I really felt uncomfortable about the religiosity of AA specifically. So, the first time I ventured out, as I said in the article, I heard about this, non-religious AA meeting at Jan Hus Church on the Upper East Side in Manhattan. And I went there, and I was so disappointed. All they did was lambast religion in other AA meetings, and I was really crushed. And because I just wanted to see what AA without religion was like. And so I went back to my conventional AA, and for another 10 years. But again, and during this time, the religiosity in AA rooms really started to increase noticeably. So, and maybe even more uncomfortable. And so I ventured out again, surreptitiously. And at that time, I found in New York the beginnings. There were several meetings. They've been around for a long time, agnostic meetings. Now we have, I think, 16 different meetings, 16 groups in one each of the boroughs. So I was very lucky. As a rule, there isn't much religion bashing. And I get uncomfortable when people describe their personal religious beliefs, even if I agree with their personal religious beliefs.
Right.
I don't want to hear it. But I'm really, really adamant on the fact that people can say anything they want about any meeting from the floor. That is absolutely paramount. So, I listen to other people. I run my mouth at meetings, whatever. So, as it turns out, I go almost exclusively now to what we in New York call agnostics.
Right. And I was I was surprised that you did the regular AA for 15 years. The praying, you went through all of that for 15 years. Then you went to that meeting, and you went back to the traditional meetings for another 10 years.
Yes.
So that kind of parallels me too. I was 25 years in regular traditional AA, doing the steps, reading the books, doing all that kind of stuff. I didn't really have any belief whatsoever, one way or the other. I don't think I really believed in God deeply, but I went through the motions. But you definitely, at that point, you were an atheist. You knew you were an atheist when you were doing that the entire time.
Hold on.
Okay.
As you can see in my article, I've never described what I am, what my beliefs and non-beliefs are.
Okay.
I like to consider I just did not like the religiosity of
Gotcha.
AA. I don't think God, if there is a God, had anything to do with my picking up a drink or anything to do with my putting down a drink. And
Gotcha.
it just seemed so alien. But I also did say in the piece that as crazy as it would seem to people, if the only choice I had between staying clean and sober was to go back to that religious conventional AA, I would do it.
Sure.
I mean, I value my sobriety more than anything, as silly as that sounds. But I don't want to go back to the previous existence of mine.
No, either. It's funny how I just put assumptions on people. I just kind of assumed about what you were. But okay. So what is your vision for all of this now? We call it agnostic AA. We're talking now more secular AA. Why don't you kind of go run through it, Vic? What you think about this whole, if you want to call it a movement, or what you want for the future of Alcoholics Anonymous or the future of agnostic AA?
Yeah, we in New York still call it agnostic AA, but it was brought to my attention that's not an inclusive term, that excludes a whole bunch of different people, humanists, whatever, and that secular AA was by far the most inclusive term, and so I'm trying to get myself to say that. I gag on the term WAFT. I just think it's really clumsy. It excludes a whole bunch of people. But so I'm going to use the secular AA for the rest of this conversation if I can remember.
Okay.
So as I said in the piece, when I heard about the convention in Santa Monica, I was thrilled, and because I just finished producing this documentary on church and state issues. And it really dealt with the first part of the First Amendment, was saying that the government, the United States government, first part of the First Amendment, the first clause says Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting free exercise thereof. So that means Congress will take no position on religion, but you are free to exercise your religion in any way you want. And so I thought, well, so here comes this new secular AA convention. That's terrific. That's what it'll be. And I was thrilled. And then, but not for long, one of the first announcements I got was that Reverend Ward Ewing was going to be a keynote speaker. I was gobsmacked. I mean, I really, truly, I just couldn't understand it. And by the way, I've talked a lot with the Reverend at the convention. He's a wonderful guy. It has nothing to do with him as a person. It's just, and I thought, well, what is this going to be? And then they watered down the sort of. I mean, I sent out an angry email to as many people as I could find, and the sort of general consensus coming back was we like the selection of the Reverend, and so he was kept. And I guess as a sort of sop to me or something, that they watered down that by adding two other keynote speakers. I could have more than one, but.
Right.
And so, and two out of the three were believers. So I let it rest. I didn't say anything. And then I led a panel on spirituality. Is spirituality compatible with agnostic AA? And Reverend Ewing agreed to appear in the panel, and which is very gracious of him. And that's kind of what the rest of my article is about, and my feelings. It's about the whole idea of what exactly is WAFT as it goes forward. Because if you define it, then its actions will follow. So, is it going to be an organization that is secular? In other words, takes no position on religion, or is it going to have some sort of religion light in it? I think that. The famous Pew polls that have come out recently saying, the number of nuns, N-O-N-E, nuns, has really grown. And Bill Maher, jumps on that and say, atheism is growing and all that stuff. I disagree. I think I see this in WAFT, is that in terms of organized religion, the Abrahamic religions, that number is shrinking, all right? And, but the number of people that maintain some other sort of personal spiritual belief, I think that's what's grown. I think that's what the nuns are primarily. as opposed to, let's say, atheists, which I think are 5 or 10% of the population at best. I think there's a big chunk of nuns, and that's what people are mistaken for agnostics.
Right.
Atheists.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So here we are. So then I would include in the membership of WAFT. I mean, I'm sure there's a maybe disproportionate number of atheists,
right?
But I would say a lot of people in WAFT have some sort of spiritual belief,
right?
And I think that's great. Whatever you believe or don't believe, that's terrific. The point is, how does that fit into secular AA? And that's what I think the rub is.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of conflicted on this a little bit, although I'm kind of forming an opinion.
What is it?
Well, here's where I stand. I think for me, first of all, spirituality is nothing. It's nothing but language. I'm an atheist. I don't believe in anything supernatural whatsoever. Everything, as far as I'm concerned, has a natural scientific explanation. And when people are talking about spiritual things that they're experiencing emotional or psychological things, as far as I'm concerned. And I interpret it that way. Unfortunately, AA is spiritual. It's religious. It's religious is what it is. People call it spiritual. I didn't grow up in a religion. AA became my religion. So these people that are agnostic or atheists that come to our meetings, they have experience in Alcoholics Anonymous, and they have adopted this spiritual language. And they think that spiritual language is the program. I think not all of us, but many of us. And I have no problem with it. Like you, people can say whatever they want to in a meeting. They can relate their recovery in whatever language they choose to. Where I have a problem with it, though, is when they insist that I must also be spiritual. I heard just the other day in our meeting here in Kansas City, a new guy came to our meeting. He wanted to see what this was like, and we were talking about spirituality. And he said, spirituality is important. It's the most important thing. Without it, you're going to get drunk. And many of us in the room just went, no, that's not how we feel. But that's how a lot of people in AA feel. And I don't know if that's so true in our movement itself, but a lot of people feel that way. And so anyway, there's kind of a delicate balance that we walk where, we read, and you talked about this a little bit too, the Agnostic AA Preamble. We have a right to reject spirituality if we want to. There's a real problem. The people that are very, very spiritual seem to think that we all have to be. And that's the issue as I see it. That's the problem.
Well, I don't see it that way. I mean, I've been around once or twice where people say, you either find God or you're going to get drunk. I mean, which I consider the same thing as what you just said. Just going back to what you said, that AA itself is spiritual. I mean, AA is religious. It's got the word spirituality all over it. I think it's just sort of a fig leaf for religion. But that's what AA has always been, and courts have ruled that it's a religion.
It is.
Being contested in that, but there's some famous ones. Some guy got a huge award for being sent to AA meetings in San Francisco. And that's playing itself out. And that's interesting on itself. But as far as I'm concerned, we had, in one of our meetings in New York, we had a seminary student. I could never figure out why he was in the agnostic meeting, but he was there. And a very sweet, quiet guy. So as far as I'm concerned, all are welcome. My concern is WAFT as the secular AA as a superstructure. Because there is conventional AA, and also all meetings are autonomous. So if you want to have a group saying whatever you want to say, fine. But my concern is specifically with the superstructure, what is called WAFT now. I hope they'll change their name. What is that going to be? Because I went to WAFT expecting something similar to the U.S. government. That is, it's secular. It takes no position on religion, yet you can exercise your beliefs any way you wish.
Okay.
And I think that's what the rub is. I mean, there are people who at conventions want more, quote, balance, which means they want more spiritual. They want to have. In fact, I think there is a workshop workshop on Buddhism in AA. And,
right.
And my feeling is, Buddhism is one of those sort of hip religions. You really can't knock Buddhism. You can't knock Native American religion. That's like it's a sacred cow, excuse the expression. But let's say Buddhism in AA. Well, if someone wants to share from the floor about Buddhism, then that's fine. But they say, well, we want to learn about it. And I'm saying, well, are we going to secular AA, not to learn, this conventional AA, which embraces, spirituality and religion.
Right.
I thought secular AA, just ignored it. And, so why would, are we going to have, workshops and, universal, Unitarianism and AA? As I said in the piece, if you want to learn about those things, you can go to conventional AA, or you can go to a Buddhist temple or a Universalist church. I thought that secular AA, as an organization, was not going to address itself to those issues.
Gotcha. So you would prefer at the convention in Austin, for example, that there not be any like workshops that have anything to do with, any spirituality, any spiritual type of approach?
Yeah, yes, that's just my opinion. But I mean, well, I made the analogy that I thought secular AA was like the U.S. government. But where that analogy is secular, where the analogy falls apart is, the way the U.S. government has been interpreted, I disagree with. But now, there's always been a chaplain at Congress, sessions, opening of sessions in different civil organizations. And you can have, let's say, a manger scene on public property if you also have, usually it's a menorah or something like that. And I disagree with that. I think if public property should not have anything religious on it. But as a result, by the way, of allowing mangers and menorahs, they've had to allow Festivus poles, which are basically poles made out of beer cans. Right. And they've won. And in fact, one or two manger scenes have been taken down because the people with the manger scenes realized that they're being punked, they're being made fun of. And I don't think secular AA should go down the road of saying, well, we'll just embrace all beliefs. And I'm saying, oh no, that's what conventional AA is for.
So what do you do, Vic, with these people? And there's a lot of them, and I was one, maybe anyway, who are atheists but consider themselves spiritual. In other words, they still work the steps, and they think the steps are spiritual, and so therefore they want to have this sort of language incorporated in their recovery, and they want to have a workshop where they talk about that.
Okay, that's a lot there. First of all, if someone calls themselves an atheist and they're spiritual, fine. Whatever you want, that's fine with you. So if we go into the step area, which I have not talked about, we have the elephant in the room is a agnostic and Roger and the Canadian delisting of the Toronto group. Well, let me just tell you what happened in New York. Because I was somewhat involved. They wanted to delist. I'm a member of the intergroup, and the intergroup meets 4 times a year, several hundred people. And one of the things they do is they agree to accept and list meetings. And then usually about 3 or 4 that come up. You have to go through this whole procedure over the course of 6 months to qualify. And my friend, who has one of the great meeting names of all time, it meets at 11 o'clock at night in a Catholic church, and it's called This Ungodly Hour.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And so when that came up, there was a member of the intergroup board who was a member of the Atlantic group, which is the sister group of the Pacific group, who really jumped up and down. And their only weapon against that was the altered 12-step. Okay. And I was able to say, because we in New York have gotten rid of any type of altered 12 steps off the website. There's no official scripts involved. It means you can talk about it before, you can talk about it from the floor as an individual, and you can talk about it after the meeting's over. But as far as the official meeting, had nothing to do with the 12 steps. And they had to relent because, and that happened twice. I started another meeting called Without a Prayer, and I was up against the same thing and had to explain to people what we were, and there was no problem.
Right.
So I'd actually had a couple of email exchanges with Roger about this before at Santa Monica, and I said, Roger, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a Canadian, but I think part of the problem may be that GSO owns the copyright to the 12 steps, and you can argue a copyright law, but if that is the case, they're going to prevail, and we in New York decided to lose the battle and win the war. We have lots of visitors almost every meeting we go to.
Right.
From out of town, and they found us through Intergroup.
Right.
So he said in his email, and I'm paraphrasing roughly, some principles are more important. So he's in that battle now. I'm uncomfortable that Roger, of all people, is fighting this fight because Roger's publishing books and selling a book that is the Altered Steps. So it's a bit of a conflict of interest on his part. And then the other issue because I very much want to keep secular AA within AA, and it is. And,
yes, I agree with that too.
And Roger is poking AA in the eye. My position of no spirituality in secular AA on the official level, they're saying, you're anti-AA. I'm saying, no, quite the contrary. But insisting on using alternative steps is really, causing friction between secular AA and conventional AA.
Yeah, I remember Deidre talking about that in Santa Monica, and she said just what you said, that they wanted to, win the war, and that it wasn't worth fighting about. And I kind of did that here in our group. We when we first started up, we just naturally thought, we're going to come out, we're going to write our own steps, and we're going to print them up and all this. But when I started thinking about it, I was talking to the guy I started the group with, and I said, well, who are we to say what the steps should mean to someone else? Why don't we just leave the regular steps up on the wall and let people decide what they mean for them? If anything, people can reject them altogether if they want to. So what we do, we've had individual members of our group write steps out in their own language, and we just keep them in a little notebook binder. So if anyone wants to look at them, they can. If people want to talk about them, they can. But we just we just have the regular steps on the wall, and it's not been an issue. I kind of agree, though, that groups can do the steps if they want to. I don't know if my group could ever agree on a set of steps. It's pretty amazing that they could in Toronto.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, there is the whole belief that all AA groups are autonomous.
Yeah.
So if you say they're autonomous, why can't we have altered 12 steps? I certainly understand that argument. I've always said I thought perhaps it's a copyright issue. I mean, that's the only reason I can believe. I mean, but then again, the Ottawa Human Rights Commission is its own law, and I'm really ignorant about that. So again, and then Roger, has self-interest involved, and if it were someone else, I'd be more comfortable.
Okay. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out and what's going to happen. I kind of think that I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal down the road, but I guess it's a bit of an issue now. I think eventually that it's going to be okay for groups to do whatever they want to do with present the program however they want to anybody. But
let me ask you a question. Do you think there'll be a schism between secular AA and conventional AA?
I hope not. I don't think there needs to be. I think we should try to avoid that. I think that the differences between us and the believers are pretty minimal when you really get down to it. I mean, any of us would do anything possible to help the guy who calls for help, and we don't care what they believe. It's only when they get into the room and we start doing the steps and people come up with their own philosophies where there's any differences. I think that AA has a huge infrastructure that's worth saving, and I think a schism would be detrimental to that. I think there's a real need for people when they're in a crisis in their life to have a number they can call 24 hours a day, no matter where they are. So I think I don't want a schism. We're accepted pretty much here in Missouri. I mean, I haven't had too much problem. I haven't been pushing for altered steps or anything. I've been getting a lot of support from my area assembly, from the district that I work in. But I work with the other groups on projects that that are that we're mutually interested in. So I don't know if that really answers your question. I don't know if there will be. I think AA is going to change, and I think that we in secular AA have an important role to play with helping guide it through that change, and maybe bringing people along to hopefully get AA on a more secular path. What do you think?
I think there's several things. Number one, I think conventional AA is a very big machine entity, and it has a lot of power, and particularly just finding ourselves on different. I know intergroups are locally concerned, but right now we are officially part of, or we're not apart from conventional AA, and I hope it stays that way.
Yeah.
But I also must say that I think, and I don't know what the numbers are because AA doesn't really keep numbers, that it's fading. I mean, conventional AA for a whole lot of reasons. And one of them is the religiosity, I believe. And I think in many ways, conventional AA needs secular AA.
I think so too.
One of the things that I was talking to some people about was drunk court. You know, this case in San Francisco where a guy won $2 million because he was mandated to go to AA, and he said, you can't do that. That's a religion, and courts agree with him. I think if we secular AA, alert drunk courts around the country that secular AA exists, and that if people have reluctance to go to regular AA, conventional AA, so I think in a way, conventional AA is really going to need us. They're going to start pointing to us, and I think their numbers I think they're aging out. They're getting grayer, and they're getting smaller, I believe.
I think so too, and I'm kind of experiencing that even at the local level. A lot of our groups are shrinking here, and that's what I hear a lot when I go to the area assembly or when I go to our district committee meetings. That groups are struggling. They're cutting out meetings and that. Whereas our group is growing, and we're adding meetings, and we're people are specifically seeking us out because they do want a secular experience, and that's the area that's growing. And I think that other groups are looking at us, and they like having us there because it's almost an experiment. And I think that maybe they might eventually start. Who knows? Maybe they might adapt a little bit of that secularism themselves. See, around here in Missouri, in the Midwest, actually, the Lord's Prayer is said at every meeting. Mm-hmm. They hold hands and say the Lord's Prayer at the end of the meeting.
Oh, I've been to Springfield. I've been to the Ozark part of Missouri. I'm well, and I saw a church on every corner, so I'm well aware of that. I mean, I didn't go to a meeting, but I know it's part of the Bible Belt.
And the people in the AA meetings, they aren't necessarily the most religious people in the world, but they certainly are about AA. I don't know. I think that they could possibly be willing to change some things if they thought that this would help more people, if this would get more people into the rooms.
I believe it, but these are hardcore. It's not just the Back to Basics Pacific Group people, and they are convinced that unless you find God, I mean, the only way to sobriety is through God. So there's no talking to them. But there's a whole other group of people who may be religious or spiritual, but are open to the fact that some people aren't, and that fine, go to the secular meetings. I think that is a real golden opportunity for us. I mean, it's always that quandary because when I speak to other meetings in New York, I go out as a speaker. We have we switch speakers to just get fresh meat, as I call it, at meetings. And I always go out and my name is Vic, and I'm agnostic, and I also say I'll talk to you if you want to talk about agnostic AA. I'll talk to you after the meeting. I don't want my qualification to be about that. And there are always people that never heard of us. And I bring some meeting lists with me. They're thrilled, and they do it very surreptitiously after the meeting. So there are a lot of people, even in New York, that are completely unaware of us. So it's that delicate line between proselytizing or just alerting the world that you exist. Right. And so I'm very aware of that, and I try and just say, yeah, here it is, and come check it out if you're interested.
Yeah. And so you think that maybe if by adding all the spirituality into the mix, that kind of confuses things? Are we really secular if we're spiritual?
Well, that's my feeling. I would like to hear spiritual people who have spiritual beliefs in secular AA, give me reasons why we should. You know, I'm open to everything. I mean, you know, as I said, you know, are we going to have what sort of secular-ish AA, or is it going to be secular AA? And again, I really have to repeat this all the time, that people can say anything they want at any meeting on anything. You know, it's just that the overarching group, in this case, WAF, is it going to embrace things spiritual? And my argument against that is, well, you can do that in conventional AA. I thought secular AA was kind of a refuge from, you know, non-evidence-based belief systems.
You know, I just thought of something. When we're talking about WAFT or secular AA, there's a couple of different things that we could talk about. You've got the convention. You've got the international convention that was going to be in Austin this year. But then you also have that a lot of people aren't even aware of because it hasn't really done a whole lot. But the possibility anyway of having sort of a service organization, WAF Central, or having some type of you know, overlying you know, an official representation of agnostic AA. So I mean, the way I would see it, Vic, is I think that we need to have an organization in secular AA that is the official representation of secular people in Alcoholics Anonymous. And it could be called secular AA, it could be called Agnostics, Atheists, AA, whatever you want to call it. But it's an organization like the gays and lesbians in Alcoholics Anonymous have. It's just our official representation of our segment of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the purpose of that would be to engage with the rest of the fellowship, to educate them about the needs of our demographic within the fellowship, and really, you know, try to work within AA for our interest. That's one part of it. But then the other part of it, I think, is a totally separate thing, is the convention. And the convention is just, for me, a big party. We all come together from our various views, and we get to know each other. We share ideas, and hopefully we generate interest in going back home and starting more meetings. So I think that we've got those two things. And I think that if we're gonna shape the ideal of secular AA, that shouldn't be necessarily shaped from the convention, but it should be shaped from the message that comes from this other organization that would be similar to what the gays and lesbians have.
Well, first of all, you mentioned gays and lesbians. I don't think they would invite Cardinal Dolan as their keynote speaker.
No, they wouldn't. No.
So, but I totally agree with you. I mean, I see. You know, as you know, I wanted a merger between the convention and the other, and right now it's called WAF Central. I don't know why they're separate. But so right now they're going to stay separate, and that's fine with me. You know, I dropped my idea. But you know, right now, you know, if you Google WAFs, you get all sorts of crazy. You have to get the convention. You have to do a WAF. IAAC.org. I mean, I don't know how many people know that. I mean, it's crazy. So that's why I believe secular AA is much easier and go up the top of the search engine.
I agree with that totally.
And yes, so I salute the efforts of what is now called WAF Central. I don't know. You'll have to explain to me again why WAF Central shouldn't also have the convention as just a sub. Set of because I like the idea of one central organization that's concerned with all things secular AA, which would include the convention, which include meeting lists. Yeah. You know, I don't know what the problem is with that. But
I'm not really married to the idea one way or the other. I could probably be convinced. I think that I was looking at having those as two separate entities because there's just a lot of work with both things. And I think that, go ahead.
Oh, you just form a subcommittee. I mean, there's a committee of people putting the convention together right now. That's like, was it 6-7 people? So have a convention subcommittee. I mean, you know,
so you
I
kind of envision the convention possibly as being a place where we can get together and make actual decisions for the good of secular AA and the good of Alcoholics Anonymous altogether. Maybe we could even vote for every 2 years the people who will be on the board of the organization. Is that what you're kind of thinking like that?
Oh, well, I certainly agree that the convention can elect a new board. I think that's terrific. But, if you're going to have like referenda with a couple hundred people, that can get pretty unwieldy. So I think maybe if you have a bunch of issues that you want to say, okay, at the convention coming up in Austin, we're going to take a vote on these 5 issues, and here are the pros and cons. That's great, but otherwise it can get a little bit out of control in a convention which is limited by 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
So, but I think also people should nominate themselves or nominate them friends to be on the board, and that so by the time we get to, let's say, Austin, there's an official slate. Here are 20 people that are interested in being on the board, and we're going to take a vote. And I think the term is term limited to 2 years. I'm not too sure. But yeah,
you're going to do a panel, Vic, on what is WAFT, right?
Yes.
Okay. So will you be talking about this whole idea? Because I don't think there's a lot of people that even know about WAFT Central, or if they even know about this idea of having some sort of an organization that represents us within Alcoholics Anonymous. Are you going to kind of broach that subject?
I'm open to everything. I mean, that's yes. I mean, well, they also have the second one I'm supposed to moderate as of now is what is the future of WAFT. So I mean, they're very much related, but the opening one is on Saturday morning is what is WAFT. Let's have people talk about what they understand WAFT to be. And then on Sunday sometime, I don't know, what's the future? What do you want? I would hope there would be a vote to change the name. I have this peculiar position on the preamble, and,
I want to talk about that too.
Offer that out. Still wanted, I mentioned an idea, but I thought, every 2 years having a convention is a bit much. It's a lot of time, money, and effort. Maybe we should have it every 5 years. And the people I discussed it was dismissed as and I'd like to sort of bring that up again. But I'm not married to anything. I think it's something that we get everyone's talking about it. I think that's the best. And I do hope there's a vote on the name. That's the only thing I'm actually embarrassed what I have to tell people.
No, I agree. I don't like the name either. I think that we will change it. It's got to change. Is it not even spelled right? So it's got to change.
Exactly. So, but you want to talk about the preamble?
Yes, I do. Because I agree with you on that. We read it at our meeting. We start our meeting reading that, and I think that we did that because we wanted people to know that this is a different kind of a meeting here. Okay, we're not going to be doing God. But the problem is you almost invite it in by making a big deal out of it in the very beginning. And the AA preamble itself is pretty clear that, we're not allied with any sect, organization, politics, or religion. So why is there even a need for it? So I'm kind of agreeing with you.
Yeah, well, that's exactly my point. And as I said in the article, this incident I ran into my friend Sharon on the subway, who I'd known before AA. We're both in AA for many years. And she said, "Oh, where are you going?" I said, "AA meeting." She said, "Which one?" And I get embarrassed. I said, "Well, agnostic one." She said, "Oh, that's where they always talk about religion." And, I was kind of knocked back on my heels. And so this, bringing up religion is sort of starting the whole thing. So I think that would be an interesting, discussion in the future of WAF. We do read the same preamble at the agnostic meetings, in not the regular preamble, but the WAF preamble, for lack of a better word. And I actually altered mine, and then just a big schism. There's a woman who would not come to my meeting now because I altered the WAF preamble. And I'm saying, each group is autonomous, and anyway, so people.
Do you know the history from that? Was that written in New York by someone in New York?
I don't know. I can find out. There was a leader guy named John Y. and a woman, I think her name was Ida. I didn't know either of them. And that might have come out of there. But I thought agnosticism came out of L.A. or Chicago on a bigger scale. I know Chicago had many meetings.
Yeah, for some reason I always identified that preamble with New York, probably because I just found it on the New York site when I was first researching all this stuff when I was first starting out.
Yeah.
But
I kind of
agree with you on that.
So I'm surprised, and I include myself in this, is how upset we can be about these issues, how important it is and how emotional we get. And I include myself.
Yeah.
I have to keep on trying to say to myself, back off.
Right.
It's not the end of the world, and there are other people that have equally valid arguments. So it's not that it's a kumbaya moment, and I feel very strongly about the spiritual thing, and I want to know what people have to say. If they say, Vic, I disagree with you, I'll say, fine. What is your reasoning? And I haven't gotten any, So that's what, and I get sort of upset over that I get dismissed out of hand without any sort of counter argument.
People evolve too. I've certainly evolved, and I was listening to your the tape from Santa Monica of your panel about spirituality with Ward Ewing, and Roger was there too. And on that panel back then, Roger was actually favored getting rid of spirituality. I think he said he wanted to get rid of the word altogether and not use it at all. I don't know if he feels that way now or not. But you see how people evolve?
Yeah, absolutely. Myself too. Yeah, he either said it was meaningless or he said get rid of the word. But it just means so many things to so many people that it's, how can you can't pin it down? And
yeah.
And I had Maria have a difficult time.
Yeah, Maria Harm. And I was like her when I met her. I was kind of inspired by her. I thought, yeah, that's what I'm gonna be. I'm gonna be like Maria Hornbacher back then. Is how I felt. But now I'm not like that at all.
Yeah. Well, she's dynamic. I mean, she's very attractive. And she's a really terrific speaker and has great tattoos. And in fact, I told her after I heard her speak, I said, "Oh, you definitely have to make an audio book because it's having read your book and seen you talk about your book, they're two different things, and I think you would benefit, sales-wise." I don't know if she took it or not, but and by the way, I disagree with what she has to say. I mean, I can't make anything of it. It just seems so new agey and
Well, so what about this, Vic? When you say that about this whole language, the way I see it is when I read her book, I think it's beautiful. I love her book. I can read the language as poetry, and I can connect with the person who wrote it. But I process it differently. I don't believe in any of the spiritual mumbo jumbo, but the way that it's communicated in that kind of language through a book works for me. When someone just talks to me as a regular person using that kind of language, they lose me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's like reading poetry, I guess, sometimes. It could be. Yeah. I understand that. But my bigger question is, where does that belong in what, where, and how? And let's talk about it.
Yeah, and that's what's going to be tough because I know that there's a lot of people who like at my group in Kansas City. I think that a lot of us are Maria Hornbacher types. We actually read her book at our step meetings. So there's a lot of people that are going to be at that convention who consider themselves non-believers, but are going to be speaking in a spiritual language, interpreting the steps as some sort of a spiritual journey. And I think they're going to want to be talking to. They're going to want workshops that are dedicated to that, or they might not want it, but they would be interested and they might like it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, then
I would that.
Well, I would just offer the same arguments that I've mentioned all along. I mean, but if you're talking about some stuff which are just sort of non-evidence based beliefs, does that belong in secular AA? I mean, that's I go to secular AA to avoid that, and so
what about the steps altogether? Do you practice the steps today, or do you just you don't? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I did them all. And also before I came into AA, I went to a lot of therapy, and it turns out when I joined AA, it just so happened I met this new therapist and went to her for many years. And in many ways, the steps are very therapeutic in the monastic sort of sense. So I've gained a lot. I think some of the best things about. So I mean, I've done I did the steps to the best of my ability, but I mean, moral inventory, I've done a lot in therapy. But stuff, the ninth step, making amends and things like that. And I think it's very helpful.
Yeah. And I kind of still do the steps. I don't think that they're magic. I don't think that I'm going to get drunk if I don't do them. I don't think that they're necessary. I just do them, I guess, because I've been doing them for so long. But I think that that's where a lot of the spirituality that's what opens the door to a lot of spirituality, is because people are in Alcoholics Anonymous. They have those 12 steps, and they're gonna try to practice them, and they're gonna try to go to meetings and talk about them. I talk about them in a very practical, therapeutic way, but other people don't. Other people talk about them in a more of a supernatural, spiritual way. So I think that's the steps themselves that kind of open the door for a lot of the spirituality that you're going to hear at the convention.
Let me ask you a question. Would you approve of a workshop at the next convention entitled the Alternative 12 Steps of AA?
Yeah, I would.
Okay. You know we might run afoul of GSO.
Well, I don't know. I don't think GSO itself would bother us. I think, though, you might be no different. You're in New York. Was it actually GSO themselves who talked to you about the altered steps?
No, it was in a group. It was in a group.
Yeah, so I don't think GSO themselves are going to give us a problem, but the intergroups would, and the greater AA would. My intergroup here in Kansas City, that they wouldn't want us to alter the steps in any way whatsoever. However, we're all free to interpret the steps as individuals. So I think it would be fine to have a workshop on how do you interpret the steps as an atheist? How do you interpret the steps as a secular person?
I have no problem.
Yeah, I think that would be very interesting, because that's what I like to do. That's what I do. I as soon as I realized I was an atheist, I started looking at the steps and figuring out what they meant to me as a non-believer, and I'm still working on that. It's still a work in progress. I mean, I'm always evolving. I might eventually get to the point where, you know what, I'll just hang these things up. But for now, I'm still playing with them.
Well, I agree totally. I mean, it's completely individual, and I certainly am a big believer in however you work it or don't work it, up to you, and I'm fine with that. And I just try not to be dogmatic. I mean, I'm pretty dogmatic when it says, don't drink or drug and go to meetings. That's kind of my main tenet.
Yeah, I want to circle back to something really, really quick, because on the Reverend Ewing speaking at the convention, and also Phyllis H. speaking at the convention. Okay, these people, they were believers, but they were AA, when I was there, I thought, well, this is great. This is really interesting. These are people that are part of official AA who support us, and I found that was great, and I enjoyed that. But did you see it more as we were like placating to them, and that they just didn't belong simply because they were believers?
Well, having believers is one thing. Is it Phyllis? Was that the woman's name?
Yeah.
And I heard
her GSO manager.
She's got a great story, and she's very funny and all that stuff. Well, I mean, this is the first secular convention,
right?
And to have, believers, as it just seems like, I mean, I'm sure there are people at the convention as participants that are believers to some degree or not, And then on top of that, to have a cleric, a man of the cloth.
Right.
I mean, it's like when you say, it's like an LGBT group not having Cardinal Dolan. But to address what you're saying, having the Pope, because the Pope said very nice things about gays. He said, "Who am I to judge?" In essence,
right.
But the church he represents is very much against homosexuality, and the church, certainly the Christian church, which the Reverend is a part of, if not a leader of, even though his individual thoughts may be different, is not in favor of atheism. Or not, they all are believers. So I just thought it was not so much placating choice as this approval-seeking choice.
Right.
That said, one could argue on a one-time basis only. Okay, we had the Rev, who was a big deal in AA. I mean, besides being on the board before, I think he was the head honcho for a couple of years. I'm not sure of the whole organization. And Phyllis, who now is on the board, the fact that those two people from a official AA spoke sort of gives us the AA blessing. Okay, I'll grant you that. So, but let's move on and let's try and have people from our own rank.
Okay.
I mean, I actually saw Malcolm X speak when I was a freshman in college. Yeah, and there was a scene, at Douglas College. I mean, I went to Rutgers, but Douglas is where he spoke. And there was a scene in the movie Malcolm X has almost exactly the same thing. A young lady, a Douglas student, said, "How can I help?" She was white. And he said, we don't want your help. And it wasn't meant as a rude thing, but it meant that if we're going to help ourselves, we have to do it ourselves. We can't rely on the believers to help secular AA. We should stand up for ourselves in a very proud way, not in a very sort of I'm better than you way, but just as here we are, and let's share our experience, strength, and hope with each other.
So is that why that you might have opposed like having like maybe someone from the Grapevine or whatever there, because as a main speaker, because they're AA, but they are also AA from a religious bent?
Oh, yeah. I mean, John H., who's not a member of the board, but he kept on sending out these quotations directly from the Grapevine, which is like, hard to read.
Yeah,
I
don't even read it. I know.
Yeah. So again, it's not. It's the fact that secular AA or WAF gives its okay, imprimatur to when you say this person is going to be the keynote speaker. That means that we give this person, excuse the expression, our blessing, this choice. Okay. And that's what I have an issue with. She's probably a very nice person, and she probably will have a good defense, although I'm anxious to hear that now. But,
I don't like that Grapevine articles either. I can't read any of them. They are starting to try, I think, to publish more stuff that's more favorable to secular people, but, I don't know. I thought it would be interesting to hear how the Grapevine works and all of that, and also to have an opportunity to ask questions about, making the Grapevine more secular. But
yes, but hang on, and that's what's going to happen. And I look forward to hearing her, respond to questions and that. However, I think she was up to be the keynote speaker, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, right.
So again, it's that same argument with the Reverend Ewing. Yes, I want to know. And I just happen to think I don't know much about the organization, New York GSO, and all that stuff up on it's it's called what's it called, Seminary Row, where they have offices. I think they are really very, very tied to religion in AA. I just read Susan Cheever's book, and I think from what she said, one of the takes I took was that Bill W. himself might have been religious, but he didn't want AA because he has said so many things about not discriminating against non-believers. So, I don't know, but I think there's really very, very big pushback at the establishment level in the hierarchy of AA against secular. I don't know.
And I've heard the other side too. I've heard that our problem isn't with GSO; it's more so with the local intergroups and the local AA people. But it's also very interesting that AA doesn't write anything new anymore. I mean, there's the conference approved literature is not very good, and it's definitely not friendly for from a secular perspective. And why have they not written anything new all this time? They're not even selling the crap that they've got now. It makes no sense why they're hanging on to it.
Well, the good news is we don't have to read any more of that tortured prose. But I don't know. Well, that's part of the aspect of AA that's moribund. I mean, I think they're in trouble. I mean, they have a long glide path, but they're not going to crash and burn tomorrow. But I think that, as you said before, the Indie Group in New York City has had some money problems. And I think they're okay now, but that has never been the case before. So, I don't know. I would like to think that they could. I'm sure there must be people in GSO and that who are looking around and saying our numbers are dwindling. They must be able to tell by the donations.
They got to be. Oh yeah, they are. In our area assembly, that's all they talk about is how, AA isn't doing well financially right now. They lost money on the big convention in Atlanta. Somebody ordered a whole bunch of these special big books that didn't sell. The group contributions are declining. They're not getting enough money from the area assemblies to support the conference in New York every year. I mean, they're not doing well. Our numbers are dwindling. And what drives me crazy though is the way that AA had always made money in the past was through publishing its books. But the books aren't selling anymore. They need to write some books that are in in language of the 21st century and maybe more secular. We could help them with that. And I think that's the only way it's going to turn things around. We've got to do that. But back to your point, if they are married to that whole religion thing, then that would explain it. That would explain why they don't want to do it. But
Well, look at the agnostic pamphlet, Many Paths to Spirituality.
Yeah, it was terrible.
It was almost like chapter 3 or 4, We Agnostics again. It was condescending if you really, and so there is that mentality. I mean, that was like...
The gays wouldn't have put up with that. You could not do a gay pamphlet. You could not do a gay pamphlet like that.
Yeah.
That was offensive. You can't do a gay pamphlet about how some gays go straight. You can't do shit like that. And that was the problem with that pamphlet. It wasn't written. I don't even think it was written by real atheists. As an atheist, I was offended by it. Yeah. It didn't do any good whatsoever. Yeah.
So that's the headwaters that we are fighting. And I totally agree with you that I think, as I said before, that establishment AA is going to need us more and more as the numbers dwindle, because more and more people, just aren't buying that whole thing. I mean, I've been told it's down south. Someone said at a meeting, people stand up and say, "Hi, I'm so and so. I'm an alcoholic and a sinner." I mean, it's like a revival meeting. So
yeah, it's getting a little bit worse, I guess, in some respects.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we should just talk just to conclude things. Is there anything you want to talk about the convention itself? Anything that you can tell us about that is upcoming, or anything that the convention needs, or anything along those lines?
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's always nice to have fellow travelers around, and I enjoy people and that have similar outlooks on life than I do. And I'm looking forward to some good food and some good music. I'm really looking forward to Austin and everybody.
Yeah.
I'm going there really, as I did the last time. I had a terrific time in Santa Monica, and I expect the same thing in Austin. And, I just encourage everybody to go onto the waftiaac.org website, sign up, that great room rate, and I'm actually spending an extra night because I want to have some friends from high school down there. I want to see.
Oh, great.
And I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. And thank you, Vic, for doing this conversation with me. I really did enjoy it very much, and your article was really, really, really excellent. I enjoyed it, and I like these ideas. I like discussing these ideas, and sometimes I think it's better to actually talk to somebody about them. I don't know what it is about email that gets people all screwed up, but it was really nice talking to you.
Right. Well, same here. I really enjoyed the opportunity, and I thank you very much. And I wish you all the best for AA Beyond Belief.
Thanks a lot, Vic.
Well, that's it for another episode of AA Beyond Belief, the podcast. We'll be back real soon. Until then, be well and take care.